Welcome to Neuschwanstein Castle. This beautiful building is known throughout the world as one of the most impressive and fairy tale-like real-life castles ever constructed. If you haven't heard or seen this castle before, you've probably seen this one, or maybe even this one before. Disney castles, especially Sleeping Beauty Castle in Walt's original Disneyland, were inspired by Neuschwanstein Castle. And that's to be expected. After all, Neuschwanstein Castle was built to realize the medieval-inspired fantasy of King Ludwig II of Bavaria. Even though this might look like a medieval castle, its construction actually started only 155 years ago. Don't get me wrong, it's still an old building, but it's not really as old as you would think. Ludwig II became King of Bavaria in 1864 upon his father's death. He was only 18 years old when he ascended the throne. Ludwig was inspired by musical mythologies early in his life. He was an extravagant person who wanted things done his way. He had spent a lot of his childhood in Neuschwanstein Castle, which looked out over a mountain with ancient ruins. The views of those old ruins stayed with him throughout his life. When he became king, it was his wish to one day build his own castle there in the place of those old ruins. He wanted his castle to look like a romanticized interpretation of the Middle Ages. In many ways, the castle that he had spent a lot of his childhood in was inspirational to this dream castle that he would create. When Ludwig's grandfather, Ludwig I, died, he had enough money to start construction on the castle. The old ruins at the top of the mountain were destroyed, and in 1869, construction of Neuschwanstein Castle started. The full plans of the castle were never completed because in 1886 the Bavarian government concluded that King Ludwig was mentally insane. He was removed of his powers, and only days later, he and his doctor were mysteriously found dead in a lake. It probably has something to do with not being subscribed to me, so maybe if you subscribe to me and like this video, your chances of being found dead in a lake will get smaller. No guarantees though. Just try it. Construction of Neuschwanstein Castle wasn't finished by the time of the king's death. The ongoing phase of construction would be finished, but the full plans, which included a 90 meter or 300 feet high tower, would never be built. I had the privilege of visiting the castle last year and I was completely blown away by it. I had seen pictures and videos of the castle before and I knew it inspired the Disney castles, but I didn't know what to expect from the visit itself. First of all, the castle really looks beautiful from all angles, so when you drive there, you're in awe from the first moment you get a glimpse of the castle. The most beautiful view of Neuschwanstein Castle is from the Marienbrücke, a bridge between two mountains. If you're afraid of heights, you might not like this bridge. The wooden floor has some flexibility to it, so when a lot of people walk on the bridge, you might feel some movement under your feet. But to be honest, it's all worth it for the view. It's an amazing place to visit. We booked a tour in advance and I'm really happy we did the tour. The interior of the castle is even more extravagant than the exterior. This place was built to the specific wishes and demands of King Ludwig II. Every room and every little detail was planned out by the king himself. Some of the highlights of the interior were the throne hall with a spectacular dome, the hall of singers, and the bedroom where the Act of State took place and they took King Ludwig away from his castle. There is also a grotto inside the castle. Of course, this is a man-made grotto, but it just goes to show how King Ludwig's imagination influenced the interior of the castle. The grotto had some water features and a hidden door that goes into a stairway that was meant for his servants. Even though the castle is over 150 years old, the engineering behind some parts of the building are fascinatingly modern. The large dome, which is part of the throne hall, is supported by steel beams that go all the way down the hall. They are decorated to look like marble pillars on the outside. The main structure of the castle is made from steel with brick walls placed in between. This would provide more support to the castle, but is something that would normally never be part of a medieval castle. It's so interesting how this building feels both very old and very modern at the same time. I don't think any other castle in the world can compare to this one. At the end of the tour, we were able to go on the lower balcony that sticks out the back of the castle. You get some great views over Hohenschwangau Castle, the castle where it all started for Ludwig II. You can see why it was his dream to build a castle up here. This is probably the most picturesque place I've ever visited. There were so many hidden details within the interior that it was almost impossible to spot them all. The woodwork, the ceilings, the floor, the wallpapers all seemed to tell one of those fantasy stories that he loved throughout his life. Little did he know that the story of his own life and his legacy would later in itself become a fantasy story for centuries to come. King Ludwig II became king upon his father's tragic death, was able to express his extravagant personality through fulfilling his dream of building his own castle, but was removed from power when the government considered him to be mentally insane and tragically drowned days later. It's a sad ending, but it's Disney who told you that all fairy tales need to have a happy ending. True fairy tales sometimes tell tragic stories. Thanks for watching this video. I make videos about places or topics that seem interesting to me. Maybe if we share some of the same interests, you might want to subscribe and get notified when I upload new videos. And if you do that, I'd really appreciate it. Thanks.